Hi guys, how are you today? So I titled this the energy update because when I generally don't know what I'm going to be talking about, but that I know that the guides are going to come through with messages that are pertinent, I title it energy update. And a few months ago, I used to go on these nightly walks right before going on YouTube, like 10 minutes before I would go on YouTube or 20 minutes before I would go on YouTube. And I would get inundated with all these messages that I was supposed to share with you all. And I remember I used to cross my fingers, please help me remember these. And the best way I can describe it is there were messages that were in queue upstairs, and then I would open the attic and let one message seep in, and then the next message trickle in, and then the next message trickle in, and the next message. And my job was to kind of be the manager of what I thought was most important to share that night. And because I've always been big on sharing messages that have oomph and that are concise. So I like messages that really have a punch to them and that are concise in nature. But ever since I fully merged or came into contact with Serapis Bay, my energy, I don't know if you could tell, but I'm so chill from like a 9 to a like 1. And my playful side still comes out sometimes, right? We have to animate these avatars. But for the most part, I find that I'm not meditating as frequently. I'm much more heart-centered, and I'm in that receptivity and perceptivity, and I'm able to channel messages in real time. So I don't need to go out for a walk to ask the guides, what do you guys want to discuss tonight? I just show up. And even before logging on here today and dropping in with all of you, I was trying to gather information and I was just drawing a blank. And my guide said, we just need you to trust us implicitly and that we're going to bring through the messages that need to come through. So interestingly enough, right before jumping on, I was on Instagram Live trying to get people to join us. And one person said, you seem very calm. And I said, yes, I'll get into that on YouTube. But what I wanted to share is that the last 3 months, you guys, we've really, really quantum leaped all of the star seeds, the way showers, the galactic shamans, the gatekeepers, the grid workers, the light raisers. We've all jumped into the 5th dimension. So I was inquiring a couple days ago, and I asked Serapis, I said, hey, what is it? Why has my energy so dramatically shifted? And why is it that I feel like I don't need to meditate as much as I used to? And yet I always have clear access to these energies that are readily available to me. And he responded, because Phil, your job prior to this for 9 years was to create a lot of amplitude within your vibrational field to kind of drag people along, like the people who actually wanted to ascend themselves. So you were constantly amplifying and working within the quantum field to assist and uplift other people and to kind of fast track them into their own ascension. And as soon as the quarantine hit, it was, we asked you to drop your bags because your job was complete, which really just means your job is now beginning, but your job isn't going to be as intense as it used to be. So what I feel has happened to a lot of us is that we've truly quantum jumped into this higher version of reality, into this higher octave. And now we can swoop in and really lend our hand or outstretch our arm, the collective. And the best place to function or assist from is from the heart. So before, you guys knew, like, we got down, right? Like, we got down into the quantum realms, into multidimensional aspects of this reality at large. We got into all of that stuff. But now we are being asked to come back to the basics, the 101, so that we can contribute our frequency to the collective of the human race from a very heart-centered, relatable, digestible place. So we have to speak in terms that are understandable and that people can relate to, so that they can better assist themselves in their own self-empowerment journeys. Thank you, by the way, so much for these donations. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And I'm sending you angel light as I see them come in. So that's what I think has happened. Now, the current energy is such that we're kind of in this in-between space. And I talked about this briefly on Instagram yesterday, but I'm going to expound upon it today. We're in this very uncomfortable, unclear, uncertain frequency domain. So there's the past, and I've gotten very clear visions that a lot of people have drifted apart. I've gotten a lot of visions that there's been heartbreaks and heartaches. I've gotten a lot of visions that people have actually lost loved ones. People have actually transitioned. So there's a lot of grief right now that's boiling or that's surfacing. Very much like when you boil milk and then you have the fat that floats up to the surface. There's a lot of grief that's being experienced collectively right now. And this grief is more of a general grief. For some people, it will be more specified. But I feel like there's this overarching theme of the grief. And the grief is directly associated to this person that might have broken up with you, or this friend that has decided to part ways with you. And so it has to be felt in order to be released, in order to be cleared. And yet, at the same time, there's so much going on in the world that the majority of the time, you can't even get your bearings, because you're dealing with this over there, and you're dealing with your grief, and then you're dealing with what's going to happen in your future. So there's a big question mark hanging over your future, just like a lamp that hangs over your couch. There's like this huge question mark that's looming over your future. And then there's this part of you that knows you have to fully release your past and be okay with that. And your guides have made it really crystal clear that you have to surrender your past in order to fully drop into your now, so that you can better prepare for the future. I like that. Your guides are saying to surrender the past so that you can fully drop into the now and better prepare yourself for the future. Now remember, from the quantum realm, the past is part of a linear construct, as is the present and as is the future. So the past and the future don't really have to do with each other. Do they affect each other? Of course, because we don't want to create separation and division and say that they do not. Not unlike you, if you didn't exist right now, this fabric of the universe would not be the same. That's how integral you are. But from a higher perspective, the only thing that exists is now. That's the only thing that exists. And what we tend to do as humans is we go, okay, I'm going to piece together this event that happened 5 years ago to what's happening to me now and what might happen to me in the future. And we string or chain all these events together for the sake of continuity. And that's the linear mind that likes to do that, because we like to create stories. We are like these directors or these screenwriters or these producers that like to create continuity. It's part of our human experience. But remember, the greatest way to exit out of the matrix is to start moving away from this idea of this linear progression of time, and rather identifying every event as having always been a part of your noosphere. And I call it the noosphere. It's everything that's happening within the sphere of the now. All right. But see, the mind was built, it was engineered to be able to disassemble information. So it is a gift. The mind was also built and engineered to quantify, to compartmentalize, to sometimes overly identify with a certain archetype. And I'll give you an example of that. Let's say that you want to be the funny one in your group, and now you're the funny one in your group. And you really like the energy you get from that when people put you on the pedestal and they laugh at every single joke that you make. And as soon as they stop giving you that importance, your ego is going to get negatively impacted because you overly identified with the archetype of the joker or the stand-up comic within your group. So the mind is not bad or good. The mind is a device that can be utilized to create algorithms. It can go back to the past and kind of foresee or pre-see what's going to happen in the future. So the mind is not your enemy. It's just how you use it. You're either going to use it as a tool or you're going to be the tool. And you're not here to be a tool because you're nothing. You're not even remotely close to being a tool. You're actually a brilliant being who plucked up the courage and the bravery to be here at this designated time on our planet, to be of service to humanity, to uplift humanity, to elevate their spirits, to help raise the frequency of this planetary body. Now, this video is not going to be about the outer atmosphere or the outer environment. The angels and my guides, Merlin, Serapis, the dragon. So Merlin and the dragon, Serapis and the seraphim angels. I'm actually wearing a beautiful seraphim bracelet today. It has a wing and it's African opal. I've been working very closely with the seraphim angels who protect the kingdom of God. And I, as you know, my dragon energy comes out a lot. And the seraphim angels and the dragons, they have a lot of resemblances, I must say, because the seraphim angels are the fiery ones. So they will protect the kingdom of God or the crystal palace of Source at all costs, because that's their job, is to be the gatekeeper and to ensure that no negativity or victimization can seep in. And the dragons are very elemental as well. So I work with the dragons, and both of them have a very similar energy to me. So the angels typically work with you. I'm speaking to you as an individual. So as you listen and tune into the frequencies during this transmission, just know that I'm not speaking to the global establishments or the political establishments or to the collective environment or the atmosphere right now. I'm speaking to you as an individual, because we are here to recover souls. We are here to help remember beings that they've always been divine, that they were never anything less than divine. And as you are able to recover or retrieve those fragments of your soul, that's truly the greatest legacy that you can leave behind. Because remember, it boils down to you as an individual and aligning to your highest purpose and your highest frequency. that is inherent to you that you just forgot that you were. And so if every single person can recover themselves or retrieve these fragments of their soul that went MIA, then that's the greatest change and the greatest contribution we can make to this planet at this time. So right now, you're kind of in between a rock and a hard place. And the only thing that exists is now, is this present moment. And what the guides are saying is whenever you start to rock back and forth and you have these intrusive thoughts that want to quote unquote cramp your style, and you can feel yourself swinging back and forth and back between these different narratives, all right, around a breakup. And I was just on a call with someone yesterday that was like, I don't understand why he left me, but he said that he loved me, and he said this, and he said that, and we've been broken up since April, and I don't know what to do next, and I don't know, I feel like I'm here to help people. And it's like, whoa, slow your horses. None of that exists right now. None of that exists right now. But you have these sinister thoughts that really want to disable your crystalline technology. They want to derail you. They want to knock you out of your center. So how do they do this? They get you to continually energize the breakup, the how could he do this to me, the will he be coming back, or the story of I lost my job, I don't have money, will I ever make money again? Or the I'm starting to hear from my guides, but can I start being of service now? All of these questions pertain to these sinister energies that are running rampant on this planet right now because they're fighting for their life, because they're so terrified of us, the starseeds, the way showers, the light workers, and the light quotient that we've already achieved that's now echoing through this entire galaxy, that they're pulling teeth right now. They're fighting with every breath to try to steamroll people into believing that they're less than divine. So I'm not really big on assigning a blame to demons or to angels, because you guys know I work at a multidimensional level. However, this video, the guides are saying we need to point people back to the basics, that angels and demons do exist. You can't have angels without demons, and you can't have demons without angels. And then there is then the point of perception through which you wish to see things. So I'll give you a very, very practical example. If someone breaks up with me and they had promised that they would never abandon me, and then they drop the ball and abandon me, based upon how I choose to perceive that, will either invite a demonic frequency, which is synonymous with a lower vibrational frequency that dwells at the same frequency that I'm emitting, meaning if I want to blame someone for having abandoned me, the blaming someone for having abandoned me gives off a certain energy, like a skunk, right? So the skunk will discharge a certain scent, and that scent may not really be pleasing to the nose. So that scent or that frequency is going to invite a like frequency to confirm and affirm that you're vibrating within the lower echelons of universal consciousness. However, if you then flip that table and you say to yourself, this person abandoned me. Has this happened before? Yes. This is not a new theme. This is probably a recurring theme in your life. And that person was not the final straw that broke the camel's back. This has been an ongoing theme for you. And the reason why it keeps rearing its ugly head, or it keeps cranking its volume up, is because it's time for you to stop playing the victim and assigning a blame to someone, or trying to guilt someone, or trying to steamroll someone into guilt and blame and shame. It's time for you to really extract the positive from this seeming negative situation. So based upon your perception, you will either derive a negative feeling or a positive feeling. And what we do is we liken that to angels and demons. But remember, there are demons in angel disguise, there are angels in demon disguise, and they wear these different garments. And remember, we may not always be able to fathom why there would be beings who want to siphon our energy, who want to chonk at every bit of our own energy, which is our vibrational currency, which is the gold that God gave us, that Source gave us. Why would they want to chonk at every bit of our energy? Well, because they're playing a different game than us. We are playing the game of materiality. We are playing the game of contrast. So we are like these surfers who are riding the waves of of polarity to come into a greater understanding of who we are. And they might be playing a different game that you may or may not agree with, but let's say that they're in the non-physical dimension and it's not as serious up there because you already know that you're eternal. And I'm just sharing this. I'm just spitballing right now. I'm just speaking out loud, okay? But let's just say for a minute, and this is something I just want you to share. Let's say that they're occupying a frequency that isn't physical in nature, but that is more rooted in this non-physical energy imprint. Well, they might be playing a completely different game than us. So for them, it's like, ooh, let's see if I can control this human. And what if their argument to justify that it's okay is that, well, if I get to control this human, if I get to, in a way, cloak this human and make it my bitch, make this human my slave, well, I'm still helping them because eventually they're going to find their voice. They're going to find their own voice and they're going to say enough is enough is enough. There's obviously something I'm doing to perpetuate this attachment, to perpetuate my own pain. All right, so nothing ever happened mistakenly or by accident. They might be playing a different game than us, you see. We take everything so seriously in this physical plane. But what if in the higher planes, we're actually laughing at this experiment because we know that it only lasts 2 seconds. But from this linear mindset, we see it as it's such an extensive, long process of 100 years. Do you see? And thank you, Liara. A shout out to Liara right now, who's the moderator, who's one of my greatest friends. I love you, Liara, and I'm wearing your bracelet, of course. So they might be playing a completely different game than us, you see. They're not necessarily residing upon this dense plane or this solid reality or this bubble of biology, as I like to call it. They might be up there going, ooh, let's see who wins. Okay, so they're playing a different game. They're like gamers, and we might be characters in their game. And they're seeing who they can steer in what direction. And they already know because they take everything with a grain of salt. And they encourage us to do the same sometimes, but then we take ourselves so seriously. They are then going to see who can win the game of occupying the human and then turning it into its puppet. And we go, well, I don't agree with this whatsoever. This is completely inhumane. It's completely unethical. But remember, from their perspective, it may be unethical that we hurt each other as humans. It may be unethical that we backstab each other. It may be unethical that we're unfaithful and cheat on our husband or wife. It might be unethical and inappropriate to text someone something that's completely uncalled. uncalled for, and say, you hurt me, you're a horrible person. So everything is relative. So the guys are bringing through this message because they want to highlight it with a big yellow highlighter so that you understand that we live in a multiverse and there are many laws within this multiverse. And although we may not always comprehend why things happen, they are always happening divinely and in a timely fashion. Do you see? So going back to the current energies, right now you might be feeling like there's a blend of different colors in your aura. There might be the past that you've been asked to surrender or to release yourself from. There might be the grief that revolves this person or your mom or a grandmother that you might have lost. They've transitioned over to the other side. And then there might be the question mark around your future, which is like, but what's going to happen in the world? And who am I going to become? And now I don't even know who I am anymore and what my slot in this universe is. Because before I was so clear on who I was, and now I'm completely oblivious to what's going to happen. And so these sinister energies, they want to get you to rock back and forth. Okay? Like in a, what is that thing we use at the beach? When you lie on a, someone, can you chime in and tell me? What's that thing that we, or a rocking chair is a good example. A rocking chair, or the thing that we use at the beach. What's that? Oh, a hammock. It's a hammock. It just came to me. Thank you. That was Serapis. So the hammock that can rock back and forth, they want you to get thrown off of your vibrational stool of your center point, because if they manage and succeed in doing so, they're going to then chonk at every bit of your energy. So your guides want you to divert your attention back to the present moment, because nothing exists outside of that. You guys know my nickname is Mr. Dot. I live as a dot. If you don't want to call it the dot and you don't want to dot away like I do, you can call it being a blank page. You're going to be a blank page, and every time something tries to get scribbled on your page that is relative to the future or to the past, you're going to say, da, 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 da. My energy is trying or attempting to be consumed, and I'm not going to allow for this chonking or this nibbling or this siphoning to happen. I'm going to love myself, and I'm going to bring myself to all that exists, which is this now moment. Now, remember that the ego mind, the monkey mind, the mental body will do everything in its power to get you to believe or over-believe that you are not enough, that you are inadequate, that you are unlovable. All right? And you can come up with a million stories as to how amazing your relationship was with this person, but they still dropped you. And that's the truth. It doesn't matter how many stories you try to think about to then add up or try to connect the dots. In this now moment, are they in your life? No. So what's the next best approach to then employ? The next best approach to employ is every moment and every memory I had with this person was incredible, was so enriching, was so intimate and affectionate. And those moments were unique. Those moments didn't have to do with this moment. And you could try to make sense as to why they left you or why they decided to leave you. But remember, your guides are here to train you to constantly attune yourself to the now moment. And what I like to do personally is I say, you know what, maybe they just weren't in love with me, and I'm happy for them because they're honoring their truth now. They're honoring their truth. And I would never want to have someone beholden to me. I would never want to bind myself to another person. True love, unequivocal love, unconditional love will never ever try to hold someone hostage. Okay, the guides are saying we tend to hold a lot of other beings hostage. So although we can sometimes be justified in our beliefs that the government is holding us hostage or that people are being treated unfairly, we tend to hold hostage a lot of aspects which, from another perspective, are other beings, and we hold them hostage and we keep them locked in the basement because we're not willing to let go of the past. We're also not willing to lean into an unknown future. We have to really start trusting this future that's unknown to us and leaning into it. All right, so let's just say, okay, they really want me to share this. And I know we're already at 30 minutes. I can literally talk all day. By the way, if you haven't subscribed, please do, because I do plan on doing more videos. Just picture for a minute that you have road rage. And whenever someone is tailing you, you get really agitated, and then you act upon that agitation by playing the tit for tat and by giving them a hard time. Reducing your, or you're dampening your own energy and you're stooping to their level, which is just the karmic wheel. And as you're doing that, there's this little being in your body, or this past self, or a future self of yours, or another being altogether that has a soul agreement with you that you will liberate it, you will free it from its chains, from its cave, or from its cage. Well, the whole time that you're agitated on the road and you're acting on that impulse, you're shoving that aspect of yourself back down into the basement, and you're saying you're prohibited from leaving this house. So from that perspective, you are holding an aspect of yourself, or maybe just another being altogether, hostage, and they've become your prisoner. And because we're so physically and materially attuned, and we're so third dimensionally based, we tend to justify, but this person's treating me like this, so it's unfair. But that's only you seeing the physical component of reality. What if you're doing something that's unfair, that's happening within the interdimensional aspect of reality, or within the multidimensional aspect of reality, that your physical eyes may not be able to see, but it's still happening nonetheless? And maybe that's happening to you from outside of you because you're actually doing it to an aspect of yourself within you. All right? So we're living in a reflective hologram. And the example that they're bringing forward right now is, even if you might listen to 102.7, does that mean that 102.3 and 93.5 don't exist? No. Those radio stations are always, always, always playing different songs. But because your mind is so focused on 102.7, that's the only thing you're hearing. Now they're saying the same thing with TV. If you tune into HBO, does it mean that Fox, NBC, Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max don't exist? No, they're still happening all the time, but because your point of perception happens to be on your cursor, if you will, your mouse on your computer happens to be on HBO, you have no clue what's going on NBC, on Netflix, on HBO Max, on Hulu. You have no clue. So we live in a very similar universe. And the proof is all around us. We just have to start taking heed of the different hints and the clues that are always around us. So you might be very, very passionate about the stance that you're taking about politics, But in the grander picture of reality, your opinion matters, but it's just an opinion, and opinions correspond to the ego. Opinions correspond to the mental body. It's just a perspective that shouldn't be invalidated. That perspective should not be invalidated because it's a true perspective, but in the true reality, it's one of a million perspectives. So what the guides want to entrain you to right now, they want you to get on the bandwagon of starting to include and embrace every perspective. Because whenever you get too fired up and you think you're right, the second you think you know, the second that you think you're right, that's just an opinion that's been formulated by your ego. And it's not even a new opinion, by the way. So you're not that smart. And I mean that with love. It's an opinion that was floating in the universal mind, or that was floating within the collective consciousness of humanity, and you picked it up and now you think you're brilliant. You're not that brilliant. Especially not if you start to nail yourself to that opinion. That makes you even less smart, because someone who's really smart will say, okay, let's give credence to this perspective, because every perspective has consciousness. God, source, lives in everything. But if I try to pin that as the only trail to the murder in the CIA case, then I failed. Then I'm actually trying to put God, source, in a box. God, source cannot be defined. Source is the all that is. So the second that you try to categorize or classify God, you've lost the game altogether. So the thing is, when you have an insight, number one, recognizing that you're not the original founder of that perspective. Okay? You're not the original founder of that perspective. That perspective has existed since the day before you were born. Number two, how can I expound upon that perspective? Oh, maybe I can retrieve another perspective that can also be valid. And even though those two perspectives may not be in agreement with each other, can we maybe find a way to complement them, to have them work together? Some people call it divine dichotomy. I don't know what that means. I heard it a couple of days ago, but I get it. Can you, instead of having those two perspectives be at each other's throat and be ready to stab each other, can you maybe find a way, as the master being that you are, as the aspect of God that you are, right, and start acting and epitomizing the energy of source, which is that it can't be pegged, it can't be boxed in. So if you can't be boxed in, can you maybe find a way to not box in these two perspectives? Ooh, I love that. See, my guides never fail me. They're always like, just get on. You have a brain fart right now because we're not going to let you know what's going on. We're going to empty your mind, and they know exactly what they're doing. I love my guides. I'm so grateful. So instead of trying to shove either of these in the basement, like you've been doing with your own aspects, how can you break the magician's spell? How can you break the curse and free everyone? Free everyone. So if you were to sit down and interview a murderer, would you jump the gun and say you're a bad person? Or would you maybe try to empathize and understand where they were coming from? What happened to you when you were young? Because I promise you that everyone has a valid perspective in this universe, and God, source, is not a judgmental God, source. God, source, dispersed itself in order to have an experience of itself through us. All right, so can I say that I am God? Or does it feel better to say that I'm an aspect of God, like a pearl in my bracelet that constitutes the energy of God, and that God is always changing from nanosecond to nanosecond to nanosecond to nanosecond? So from one perspective, I could say that I'm God, but it doesn't really resonate as the entire truth. What I can say is that I'm an aspect of God who is lending my frequency to the collective, And we all together make up God. And by the time I finish saying that, God's already taken on a different form. So is it possible to define ourselves as God? I would say that yes and no. You have a knowing, and I would say that that knowing is a gift from God. It is the God that lives within you. It's not unlike when you already know that you're a fifth dimensional being, but then you're like, let me just do drugs to see what that's like. And then after that experience, you come back to the knowing that you already had, which is that the drugs might have caused your vibration to decrease. And you came back to the knowing that you were already a fifth dimensional being and that you didn't need the drugs in the first place. The knowing that you had initially was God. That's God always saying to you, I'm always within you. You don't need anything outside of you. All right. The interior is the only thing that you need to focus on, because the interior bridges you into that realm where time doesn't exist. And we are here to then file that non-existent, timeless, spaceless energy into this now and into this reality. So the second that you get caught up in the exterior, there's nothing wrong as long as you have the knowing that you're exploring or experimenting, as long as you're able to bring yourself back to the knowing. You see, what a lot of people do is they start drinking, and then they start drinking some more, and those thoughts, those sinister thoughts, those demons, if you will, which can also be angels, they just don't know it yet, those demons will suck the life force out of them by constantly giving them pleasure every time they drink. And now that thought is overruling their kingdom, and they just pick up a glass or two or three of wine every single night. And now they've become a slave to that thought or to that structure. And they're a minion to these beings who are taking their energy. And every night, these other beings are looking forward to eating your soul energy. To them, it's a buffet. And then on the other hand, you could say that you want to dabble with demons, meaning you want to enjoy a glass or two a night, or maybe for a whole week, just to find and discover things about yourself you didn't know, or discover things about the field that you didn't know. But you have the awareness to bring yourself back to 0 point once all is done with. You're like, okay, that was cool, but I already know what I know, and I don't need that in order to feel empowered. Because the truth is that it's disempowering you the second that you give your authority to it. So anytime you give your authority to the outside world, to politics, and you get super worked up, anytime you give your authority and you give your power away to things that are outside of you, you're going to disempower yourself. You will disempower yourself every time, unless you have the capacity to do it from a place of diplomacy, from a place of objectiveness, from a place of allowing yourself to feel, but not getting so stuck on one perspective that now you've fallen off. You've become the fallen angel because you've cut yourself off from the rest of God's body, and you think that your perspective is the only perspective that matters. Do you see what I mean? So your perspective is just one of a million perspectives. How is it that we're going to reinstate peace on this planet? How is it that we're going to restore humanity back into love? We're going to restore humanity back into love by finally realizing that nothing can be put in a box, that everything is true to whoever that's experiencing it. And our job is not to infringe upon them. Our job is to try to understand where they're coming from, even though you may not be agreeable to it, but then to come up with another perspective and another perspective and another perspective, and you're stacking all these layers. Just like in studio, you do harmonies, you do ad-libs, you do the verses, you stack on all these harmonies, which then creates the multiverse, which is really just a symphony of energies that bump into each other, and sometimes they don't like each other's face, but we're going to eventually move into this space where we can all get along. And it doesn't mean you have to hang out with this person that you bump into. It just means that you're not holding judgment towards them, because you understand that whatever it is that they're doing is at some level serving the evolutionary advancement of the cosmos. So you may not agree, and you might condemn with every fiber of your being someone who has killed someone else, but it isn't until you die, it isn't until you cross over, that you will understand that they too had a part to play, right? They had a part to play, whether you want to believe it or not. Everything is relative. Some guides might say that you judging them is worse than them killing. And maybe there's a demon that's possessed them and they don't have a choice. Like, it's bigger than them, right? So it's all relative. It's a matter of opting out of this whole dualistic game and remembering and recalling that we are divine beings that will long exist after our body expires, because we are eternal, because we are infinite. And in the larger picture, we are immune. That's just the truth. If you take my life now, you cannot take my angelic being that I am. So I know I went for a really long time today. And I appreciate every donation. Like, if this message resonates with you, my link is feelgoodlife.com/donate. And I'm not done, but my link, because sometimes I forget, my link is feelgoodlife.com/donate. And I'll attach the link below. And please subscribe. That really helps me. We do have 863 people in the house right now, which is really exciting. All right, so one thing that your guides want to draw your attention to. They're saying we make mountains out of molehills. We make mountains out of molehills. We make a big deal out of nothingness. We really do. So someone has shown you that you don't mean that much to them, that they weren't really into you, and they abandon you. Don't take that and blow it out of proportion. The proof is in the pudding. In this now moment, they're not in your house, you're not in theirs, you don't have a date tonight. All right, it's time for us to really cement ourselves in the realistic component of this reality. We want the airy-fairy, we want the cookies and creams, we want the marshmallows and the unicorns, we want the Care Bears. I'm all about the Care Bears. But this has been emphatically reiterated by my guides. Phil, the last 9 years, you've done what you needed to do, okay? You revved up the engine of your own ascension, which then reverberated a frequency for other people as well. And you, at a telepathic level, were able to partake and assist others in lifting into these higher vibrations. But now it's all about coming back down, dropping into your human form, and assisting people who need help at a very pragmatic level. We want to be practical here. So here is the homework I'm giving you. And you don't have to do your homework, but it's just something to keep in mind as you navigate your daily life and as you navigate these uncertain waters. Rather than dwelling on the past and getting all anxious about your future, all right, ask yourself. So number one, you can either bring yourself back to the present and know that this is all that exists, or you can perceive it differently. If this is showing up and appearing in my present moment, then it is part of my present moment. I know that was deep, but if it's showing up in my present moment, if it's popping up in my present, it means that it was meant to be in this present moment. And it's obviously reappearing because there's something about that story that I haven't extracted yet as being positive. So because I've been feeding into the negative, why did he leave me? Why did he leave me? Why did I lose my job? Why am I not making money? These are all negative stories that keep you in that frequency loop of self-disempowerment. self-disempowerment. Why is it that it keeps appearing? Because I'm not seeing what it's trying to teach me. Or maybe I already know what it's trying to teach me, but I'm refusing to loosen my grip and let it go. I'm refusing. And by refusing to let it go, what am I doing? I'm holding hostages in my basement. So envision that if you were in someone's basement and they kidnapped you, and you were begging them, okay, you were imploring them to let you go, and they weren't letting you go. They're like, you're cute, but nope, not letting you go. How would that make you feel? Not really good. You would feel unseen. You would feel unacknowledged. You would feel like you were this tiny insect that didn't mean anything in this world. So I want you to start treating the energies that show up for you, the emotions that rise up in you. I want you to start treating them like people who are stuck in your basement. And every time you complain about your situation of why this, why that, when this, when that, how this, how that, where this, where that, where should I move? What should I do next? What's happening? What's going to happen in my future? That's all part of a linear construct. All right. We've already moved out of that, you guys. We've moved beyond the scope of that very limited, myopic view of reality. It's myopic. It's narrow-sighted. We've already moved out of that. So I want you to start treating these little beings, these little emotions that uprise like you. And know that every time you continue to talk about the very thing that's negative, you are shoving them back in your basement and you're saying, I'm never going to let you go. This is a time to be willing to unshackle yourself, to break out of the cage, and to spread your wings like the angel that you are, like the dove that you are, like the eagle that you are, like the falcon that you are, like the owl that I am. It's time for you to be willing to release yourself from your old story and your maybe future. Because remember, the future is always subject to change depending on how you choose to perceive reality. And how you choose to perceive reality is how you're going to receive reality. How you choose to perceive reality is how you're going to receive reality, meaning that when you choose the point of perception of they're a bad person, you're feeding into that negative frequency, which is only going to magnetically draw more of that negative frequency. And you're going to be on this roundabout that never ends. Do you see? I know I'm talking a lot and I've already shared too much, but I want you to pinpoint what it is that you do to keep yourself encapsulated in this third dimensional plane of existence and ask yourself, is this serving me? Would I want to be treated this way? Would I want to be in submission to a master? Or am I here to empower myself, to find my voice, and to set myself free? And remember, a lot of these thoughts want to derail you. They want to toss you around like a salad, like I always say. Okay? They want to shuffle your cards and confuse you every time. And where is your vibrational currency going? It's going to entities. Those entities, which is what's so wonderful and so optional about this universe, might end up being your future self once you decide to rewrite that story. Or they might be demonic or other energies who are playing a game, like gamers, who get to have your energy because you were too weak and you weren't smart enough and you weren't witty enough and you weren't sharp enough. This universe is unapologetic. It's, from many respects, it's a game. So you might never get that energy back. You might lose a fragment and never be able to retrieve it. That's just the truth. People die every day. They drop like flies every day because this universe is unapologetic in its design. It is. And there is a high level of risk involved when you choose to play and disembark from that higher timeline to then embark upon this density. There's a high level of risk, okay? High level. So the energy that you siphon off, you might never get back. But you might get it back once you decide to break your pattern and see that the entity that you gave that energy away to was actually your future self saying, stop doing that. I'm going to confiscate your energy temporarily, and I will only give it back to you when you're ready. Do you see? There's no rule here. This is a multiverse, you guys. It's an infinite field of possibility that is always percolating with infinite potentials. It's about how you choose to perceive it. And how you choose to perceive it will bring back its match. And then you can then refine and make your game more sophisticated. Like, I don't play. My game is super sophisticated, but I'm always reaching higher and finer frequencies to sophisticate it. Because it's not about the universe. It's about my universe, my reality, my universe. What am I creating? What am I creating? If I'm going to go on rants about politics and it decreases my energy, that's my creation. So my universe will respond to that to give me a choice point as to whether or not I want to keep prolonging that story or whether or not I want to start lifting and raising my consciousness into other terrains of consciousness. Do you see? So this is a good video to watch again. I highly advise you to replay it. I also advise you to watch my older energy updates. I speak at a quantum level. So it will speak to you differently depending on which now moment you are. So I also advise you to watch all my YouTube videos. I love you guys so much. I'm happy that we were able to connect today. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I'd love nothing more than for these messages to reach more people because I feel like they're profound, but sometimes I feel like they go over people's heads. And I feel like we're ready now. We're ready. So that's it. And if you'd like to donate, again, the link is below, feelgoodlife.com/donate. I love you guys infinitely, and I will speak with you in another version of the now.